What if the one person you pitted, the one person you saw as a complete and total failure, was secretly the most powerful person in your world? This is the story of Jessica, a brilliant woman on the verge of signing a $900 million deal that would make her a legend. Her only problem: her husband, Dave, a man she was convinced was a nobody, a man she was dragging through life. But tonight, at the biggest gala of her career, Jessica is about to make a very public, very humiliating mistake. Pause. She thought she was embarrassing him. She had no idea she was pouring wine on the one man who could sign her check, or tear it to pieces. This is a story of ambition, secrets, and a $900 million humiliation. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to Inspiration Seeker. This channel is where stories like this live. Hit that like button and comment below with what you would do if you were in her shoes. Now, let's begin. Our story begins in a glass-walled penthouse overlooking Central Park, New York City. The air itself feels expensive. And this is Jessica Jess Riley. She is electric. She's pacing the cold marble floor, tablet in hand, rehearsing her speech for the Metropolitan Innovators Gala. Tonight is not just a night. It is the night. Tonight, she cements her legacy. As the senior vice president of Synth Biotech, she is the genius, the architect of a revolutionary pharmaceutical patent. And tonight she is selling it. The buyer, the monolithic, invisible, and incredibly powerful Vance Global Holdings. The price: $900 million. She recites her lines to the empty room. This acquisition isn't just a milestone. It's a new dawn for therapeutic medicine. But her focus is broken, shattered, by the man in the corner of the sprawling living room. Her husband, David Peterson, or Dave as she calls him. Just Dave. If Jessica is a high-voltage current, Dave is a dead battery. While she is dressed in a tailored crimson blazer, ready for war, he is a gray, faded hoodie and sweatpants. He's slouched over his laptop at the kitchen island, headphones on, fingers quietly tapping away. Coding, he always says. Working his remote data analyst job for some no-name logistics company she can't even remember the name of. He is a ghost in her world of glass and steel. Jess mutes her Bluetooth earpiece, where her CEO is on standby. She sighs, a sound sharp with pure frustration. She walks to the window, turning her back to him, lowering her voice. Mark, I can't. Look at him. Tonight I am closing a deal that will change the industry, and I am dragging that as my +1. Her CEO, trying to be supportive, says something about how he seems nice. Jess scoffs. Nice. Nice doesn't build empires, Mark. He's not support. He's an anchor. I swear, I am dragging a corpse through life. He has zero drive, zero ambition, zero anything. She looks at Dave with a stinging mix of pity and contempt. He'll probably ask the billionaire at the gala if they have any craft beer, she mutters. She hangs up the call. Dave, she snaps. He doesn't hear. Dave. He finally looks up, pulling one headphone off. Yeah, Jess. You sound great, by the way. You're gonna kill it. Her eyes narrow. Just, please, try to look like you belong tonight. Is the rented tux ready? Yeah, he says quietly, his eyes already drifting back to his screen. It's in the closet. Don't worry, Jess. I'll stay out of your way. That's all I ask, she says, turning back to her speech. She has no idea what Dave is really looking at on that screen. It isn't logistics spreadsheets. It's the entire global market, and it's all waiting on his command. The moment Jessica clicks out of the penthouse, her high heels echoing down the hall, Dave Peterson's entire posture changes. He doesn't just sit up. He transforms. The slouch is gone. The dull, vacant look in his eyes vanishes, replaced by a sharp, penetrating focus that could cut steel. He glances at the clock. 5:30 p.m. He closes the laptop screen. It wasn't logistics spreadsheets. It was the live, raw data feeds from the Tokyo, London, and New York stock exchanges, all moving in real time to his specific algorithmic commands. He walks away from the kitchen island, past the immaculate floor-to-ceiling bookshelves that Jess bought as a design piece. He stops at a section of dark mahogany paneling between two shelves. He presses his thumb to a spot that looks like a simple wood knot. It's not. It's a biometric scanner. There's a hiss of decompressed air, and the entire wall panel slides open, revealing an entrance. He steps inside. The apartment is all glass and white marble, open to the world. This is a vault. A dark, soundproof cocoon of pure technology. There are no windows. Just a semicircle of glowing, curved monitors displaying global asset maps, secure networks, and financial data that would make Wall Street tremble. He sits in a high-backed leather command chair. The person who sits in this chair is not Dave. This is Mr. David Vance. He initiates a secure, encrypted video conference. Instantly, 4 faces appear on the main screen. They are stern, older, and impeccably dressed. This is the board of Vance Global Holdings. Mr. Vance, a woman says, her voice crisp. Good evening. Everything is in order for the gala. A man next to her, the CFO, chimes in. It's a high valuation, David. $900 million is the absolute top of our range. Are you certain? David leans forward. When he speaks, his voice is unrecognizable. It's not the soft-spoken Dave. It's deep, resonant, and carries the effortless authority of inherited power. It is a high valuation, Robert, David says. But the asset is worth the premium. Ms. Riley's research is 5 years ahead of any competitor. This patent isn't just a product. It is an entirely new vertical. We are not just buying a company. We are buying the future. And Ms. Riley herself? The woman asks. Her work is impressive, David says, his face unreadable. The price is high, but the asset is worth it. I will finalize the signing tonight. In person. There's a respectful silence. Finally, the CFO nods. Very well, Mr. Vance. We'll see you there. The screens go black. David sits in the silence. He has used Peterson, his mother's maiden name, since college. His father's name, Vance, was a key that opened every door. Peterson forced him to learn how to pick the locks himself. It was a test, to see who would value him and not his family's multi-billion-dollar empire. He stands, walks out of the vault, and the panel seals with a silent click. He looks across the apartment at the rented tuxedo, hanging pathetically on the closet door. He sighs. He straightens his shoulders, lets them drop into their familiar slouch, and the mask of Dave Peterson settles back into place. It's time to play his part. Imagine the Egyptian wing of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Now imagine it filled not with tourists, but with the 1% of the 1%. Billionaires, venture capitalists, and tech titans. Towering statues of ancient pharaohs stare down at a modern sea of black ties and designer gowns. A string orchestra plays somewhere, but it's drowned out by the hum of power. This is the Metropolitan Innovators Gala. And tonight, it is Jessica's kingdom. She is radiant. A queen. She glides through the crowd in a sharp emerald green gown, a glass of champagne in one hand, her other hand shaking deals. She is laughing, networking, dazzling. She is the $900 million woman. Everyone wants a piece of her. And then there's Dave. He is a rowboat tethered to her yacht. He looks painfully out of place in his rented tuxedo, which seems just a little too large in the shoulders. He's been standing near the same marble column for 20 minutes, holding a glass of club soda, desperately trying to look invisible. Jessica, from across the room, spots him. She's talking to the editor of a major tech journal. She sees him awkwardly fidgeting with his bow tie. Her brilliant smile tightens. It becomes brittle. She can feel the pitying looks from her colleagues. Her CEO, a slick silver-haired man named Greg, walks up to her, beaming. Jess, you're the star of the show. Everyone is talking about you. He follows her gaze to Dave. Greg's smile falters for just a second. He walks over, slaps Dave on the back a little too hard. Dave, good to see you, buddy. Keeping the home fires burning, eh? Dave just gives that polite, empty nod. Hi, Greg. Jess is doing great, isn't she? Greg turns back to a small group of investors, pulling Jessica in close. "I tell you," he says loud enough for all to hear, "I don't know how she does it. She built this entire platform from the ground up, works 80-hour weeks, and still manages all." He gestures vaguely toward Dave. Jess, you truly are a miracle worker." Then comes the punchline. "It's just good one of you in the marriage built an empire." The group lets out that tight, polite laugh. The kind of laugh that's really a knife. Jessica's face is stone. She forces a smile, but her cheeks are burning. She's not just embarrassed. She is seething. Every ounce of her success, she feels, is being cancelled out by his failure. She sees him not as her husband, but as a living, breathing symbol of her one great personal bad judgment. He just looks down, adjusts his cuff, and takes a sip of his soda. To her, his silence isn't patience. It's weakness. And she's had enough. Dave had managed to escape to the main bar, hoping to blend into the shadows by the towering temple of Dender. He was just ordering another club soda, minding his own business, when a figure slid up next to him, blocking his exit. Well. The voice was slick, like expensive oil. Dave turned. It was Mark Donovan, the arrogant, ruthless CEO of a rival tech firm. A man who had aggressively, publicly, tried to buy Jessica's patent for months. He had lost the bid. He had lost to the mysterious, reclusive Vance Global. And he was not happy. Mark sized Dave up and down, his lips curling into a sneer. "So you're the famous Mr. Riley," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. Dave just looked at him, his expression mild, almost blank. Mark laughed, a short barking sound. "I gotta hand it to you, man. You have got the sweetest deal in New York. Must be a great life." "I'm not sure what you mean," Dave said quietly. "Oh, come on," Mark leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Riding your wife's $900 million coattails. She's in there, a shark in a designer dress, and you're the... What are you? The pilot fish? What is it you do exactly?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Dave, committed to his cover, committed to the man he had pretended to be for years, simply gave a small, polite shrug. "I just support my wife," he said. Jessica was watching this entire exchange from 20 feet away. She had been heading to the bar to get Dave, to pull him away from public view. She couldn't hear the whole conversation, but she saw Mark Donovan's sneering, predatory body language. She saw her husband shrinking, making himself small, nodding politely. And then she stepped closer, just close enough to hear that final, fatal sentence. "I just support my wife." That was it. That simple, weak, pathetic phrase. It was, to her, a confession, a public admission of his own worthlessness. All the frustration from her CEO, all the pitying looks from her colleagues, all the deep, burning shame she'd hidden for years, coalesced into one single blinding moment of white-hot rage. He wasn't just embarrassing himself. He was, in front of her rival, embarrassing her. He was invalidating her strength with his weakness. She didn't think. She didn't plan. She just reacted. Her eyes scanned the bar. She saw a full, deep red decanter of Cabernet, left on a server's tray. She changed direction. She didn't walk. She stalked. Mark Donovan was still smirking when he saw Jessica approaching. He put his hands up, a grin on his face. "Whoa, here comes the $900 million woman herself, just congratulating your husband on his support." Dave turned on his bar stool. "Jess, are you okay?" Jessica said nothing. She didn't even look at Mark. Her eyes were locked on Dave, and they were burning. She was holding the heavy glass decanter of Cabernet. "Support me," she whispered, her voice so low and tight it was almost a hiss. "Jess, what are you doing?" Dave asked, his polite Dave mask still in place, but a flicker of confusion in his eyes. "Support me," she said again, louder this time. The people nearby started to turn. "You don't support me. You embarrass me." She took a step closer. Dave was sitting. She was standing, towering over him. She raised the decanter. "Jess, stop," Dave said, his voice quiet, still trying to de-escalate. But it was too late. She was too far gone. "I am done," she shouted, and the word echoed, silencing the nearby conversations. "I am done being weighed down by you. You are a leech, Dave. A spineless, ambitionless disappointment." And then she lifted the decanter high. Pause. She tilted her wrist. It wasn't a splash. It was a deluge. A thick, dark, crimson river of wine cascaded over his head. It hit his hair, ran in streams down his shocked face, and soaked the shoulders of his rented tuxedo. It splashed onto his white shirt, staining it instantly like a fresh wound. The orchestra stopped. A woman gasped, and that gasp was the only sound in the entire cavernous room. 100 of New York's most powerful people were frozen, watching. Dave didn't flinch. He didn't wipe his face. He just sat there, drenched in wine, his head slightly bowed. Cameras flashed. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. The image from the prompt is perfectly captured here. Jessica stood there, breathing hard, her arms still in the air, the empty decanter in her hand. A single, triumphant, rage-filled laugh escaped her lips. She had finally shown everyone what a burden he was. She had severed the anchor. She slammed the decanter down on the bar. She had no idea that in that moment, she wasn't just humiliating her failure of a husband. She was publicly assaulting the most reclusive and most ruthless billionaire in the country. She was pouring wine on Mr. David Vance. The entire cavernous room was a photograph. No one moved. No one breathed. The only sound was the slow, steady drip, drip, drip of Cabernet falling from Dave's chin onto the white marble floor. Jessica stood in her power pose, her chest heaving slightly, the adrenaline of her rage still pumping. She felt vindicated, cleansed. But the silence was wrong. It was too heavy. Greg, her CEO, looked like he'd seen a ghost. He wasn't looking at Dave. He was looking at Jessica, his face ashen, an expression of pure, unadulterated terror. "Jess," he whispered, his voice cracking. "What did you do?" Before she could answer, the silence was shattered. The event's MC, a professional in a sequin jacket, had obviously been given a frantic signal. His voice boomed over the speakers, amplified, unnatural, and desperate. Ladies and gentlemen," he stammered, trying to pull everyone's attention to the main stage. If I could have your attention, please." He was trying to paper over the horror, to pretend the single most humiliating event in gala history hadn't just happened. And now, he fumbled with his cue cards. The moment we have all been waiting for. The formal signing of the synth biotech acquisition. A few people turned, grateful for anything else to look at. The MC took a deep, shaky breath, trying to regain his composure. "It is my profound honor to introduce the man who made this all possible. A true titan of industry, a visionary who never ever appears in public." A massive spotlight flared to life, sweeping across the room. Jessica felt a small, cold knot of confusion. Never appears in public. The spotlight landed, not on the stage, but on the main VIP table at the front, the one that had been conspicuously empty all night, reserved for the guest of honor. Please put your hands together and welcome the founder, the CEO, and the sole owner of Vance Global Holdings, Mr. David Vance. Pause. The music swells with a dramatic flourish. The spotlight hit, an empty chair, a glass of untouched water, a neatly folded napkin. The music stuttered and died. The crowd murmured. Where was he? Did he see the commotion and leave? The MC began to panic. Mr. Vance? Mr. David Vance. Jessica was no longer angry. She was just confused. Her $900 million deal. Where was the man who was supposed to sign it? And then, from the shadows by the bar, came a sound. A slow, wet squeak. The sound of a single wine-soaked leather shoe stepping onto the marble floor. The MC was still stammering into the microphone. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. It seems Mr. Vance is, Then everyone heard it. Squeak, squeak, squeak. It was the only sound in the dead-silent room. Every head turned, and from the shadows by the bar, he emerged. He was still dripping. His hair was matted with drying Cabernet. His white shirt was a grotesque shade of purple. But this was not Dave. Dave was gone. The man who walked from the bar did not slouch. He did not look at the floor. This man walked with a slow, deliberate, and terrifying grace. His shoulders were back. His chin was up. His eyes, which Jessica had always seen as dull and empty, were now blazing with an ice-cold, precise fury. He was a king, and he was soaked in the wine she had poured on him. A spotlight operator, confused, saw the movement and swung the beam away from the empty table. The spotlight caught him, drenching him in pure white light, illuminating every single drop of wine. He didn't stop. He didn't wipe his face. He simply walked. As he walked, he calmly unbuttoned the cuffs of his ruined rented jacket. He shrugged his shoulders, and the jacket slid off his arms, falling to the marble floor in a wet heap. He left it there. He walked past Mark Donovan, who looked like he had been physically struck, his mouth wide open, his face pale. He walked past Greg, her CEO, who was visibly trembling, clutching his chest. And then, he walked past Jessica. She was frozen, paralyzed. Her mind was screaming, trying to make sense of what her eyes were seeing. This could not be real. This was a nightmare. Dave, she breathed. He didn't stop. He didn't look at her. He didn't even flinch as he passed her, as if she were nothing more than a statue in the room. He walked directly to the steps of the main stage. He climbed them one by one, his wet shoes leaving purple footprints on the white stairs. He walked across the stage, straight to the stunned MC, who was cowering by the podium. He gently took the microphone from the MC's paralyzed hand. The MC, his voice shaking, leaned in and whispered into the mic, his words echoing through the room, confirming the impossible. Mr. Vance. The man, drenched in wine, turned to face the room. He looked directly at Jessica. And, for the first time, he spoke. He stood at the podium, bathed in the spotlight. He didn't try to wipe his face. He didn't acknowledge the wine that was making his shirt cling to him. He owned his humiliation and turned it into a weapon. His eyes found Jessica in the crowd. They were two chips of ice. He leaned into the microphone. His voice, when it came, was not the soft, hesitant mumble of Dave. It was the deep, resonant, and utterly commanding voice from the vault. The voice of Mr. Vance. "Good evening," he said. The sound of his real voice hit Jessica like a physical blow. "My apologies," he continued, his gaze still locked on his wife, "for the cold reception." A ripple of shock went through the crowd. He wasn't ignoring what happened. He was highlighting it. He then broke eye contact with Jessica and swept his gaze across the stunned faces of New York's elite. He stood there, a man soaked in wine, and yet, he was, without question, the most powerful person in the room. "We are here tonight," he said, his voice ringing with authority, "to celebrate an acquisition." But what is an acquisition? Most see it as a transfer of assets, a price paid for a product. He began to pace the stage slowly, his wet shoes silent on the carpet. They are wrong. A true acquisition is not about the what. It is about the who. It is a bet on vision. It is a bet on the architect. He spoke with a brilliance and an off-the-cuff eloquence that Dave could never have dreamed of. He broke down the complex science of Jessica's patent, her work, in a way that was simpler, more elegant, and more visionary than she ever had. "The synth biotech patent is not just a drug," he boomed. "It is a key that unlocks a new era of cellular regeneration. It is 5 years ahead of anything on the market. It will, without question, redefine therapeutic medicine." He stopped pacing. "Vance Global," he said, "does not bet on products. We bet on futures. We bet on genius." He paused, and his eyes, they found Jessica's again. The entire room turned to look at her. She was the center of attention, not as a queen, but as a target. "And we are," he said with a cold, terrifying precision, extremely selective, about the genius we choose to partner with. We do not tolerate liabilities. He had given her speech, but he had made it his. He turned from the crowd. "Now," he commanded, gesturing to a table on stage. "If we are finished with the entertainment, let's sign the papers." David Vance, no longer Dave, not in any universe, did not look at Jessica. He didn't have to. He turned his cold, wine-stained gaze on her CEO, Greg Johnson, who was still frozen in the crowd. "Mr. Johnson," David commanded. His voice was quiet, yet it cut through the room, needing no microphone. "The papers, if you please." Greg Johnson, the slick, silver-haired man who just an hour ago had laughed about Dave keeping the home fires burning, looked like he was walking to his own execution. He flinched, as if zapped with a cattle prod. Yes, Mr. Vance. Of course." He fumbled with his expensive leather briefcase, his hands shaking so violently he could barely work the clasp. He pulled out the thick, bound contract, a document that represented Jessica's entire life's work. He scrambled onto the stage, avoiding eye contact, his face a pale, sweaty mask of terror. He practically ran to the podium, uncapped a pen, and scribbled his name on the signature line. His signature, usually a proud, bold loop, was a jittery, cowardly scrawl. He slid the document across the podium to David. "Signed, Mr. Vance." David looked at the document. He looked at Greg's signature. He didn't sign his own name. He picked up the heavy, gold-plated pen. He held it. And then, his eyes slowly lifted, scanning the crowd until they found her. Ms. Riley. Her name hit her like a physical object. She flinched. "Mr. Johnson has signed on behalf of Synth Biotech," he said, his voice amplified by the microphone, broadcasting her humiliation to everyone. "But as the lead architect, the true asset, your signature is also required as a witness to the patent transfer." He held the pen out, not toward her, just held it. An offering, a command. It was the longest walk of her life, from the center of the ballroom to the stage. Every single eye in the room was on her. They weren't looking at a queen. They weren't looking at the $900 million woman. They were looking at a fool. Her legs felt like they were moving through wet cement. The blood had drained from her face. That hot, brilliant rage she felt? It was gone. In its place was a hollow, sickening, ice-cold void. She climbed the stairs, her emerald dress suddenly feeling like a clown costume. She stood before him. Her husband. The man she had called a disappointment. He was still soaked in wine. He was still the most powerful man she had ever seen. He did not look at her face. He just held the pen, his gaze fixed on the contract. She took it. Her hand, the hand of a genius, was trembling. She stared at the paper, at the line waiting for her. She saw the $900 million figure at the top of the page. It meant nothing. She signed. Her signature, usually a bold, confident slash, was a small, spidery, broken thing. She put the pen down. She could not look at him. She couldn't look at his eyes. She was terrified of what she would see. She turned, stone-faced, and walked off the stage. She had her deal. She had her $900 million. And she had never felt so worthless. The crowd began to disperse. Quickly. No one wanted to be caught in the fallout. They had seen a public execution, and now they were fleeing the scene. David Vance, Mr. Vance, signed his name on the contract with a firm, decisive stroke. He handed the $900 million document to his own security team, who had materialized from the wings of the stage, dressed in sharp black suits. He ignored Greg, her CEO, who was still standing on stage, looking like a man who had just seen his career vaporize. David walked off the stage, not toward the exit, but back the way he came. His security team formed a perfect silent wedge around him, parting the remaining guests like the sea. Jessica was standing alone. Utterly, completely alone. In the middle of the vast, emptying ballroom. Guests hurried past, pointedly looking away, as if her humiliation were contagious. She saw him approaching. His team. His power. She couldn't move. She just watched him get closer. He was just feet away. She thought he would walk right past her, just as he had before. He was going to walk past her. But then, he stopped. He stopped right in front of her. So close she could smell the wine she had poured on him, the metallic sour scent of her own arrogance. His security team stopped with him, forming a tight protective wall around the two of them, shielding them from any remaining prying eyes. For a single moment, they were in a private, silent bubble. She was forced to look up at him, at his face. The wine was drying. His eyes were not angry. They were not sad. They were empty. They were the eyes of a man closing a spreadsheet, a man finishing a transaction. He leaned in, his voice so low it was for her and her alone. "My lawyers," he whispered, "will be at the apartment tomorrow morning. They will be there to discuss the other dissolution of assets." Jessica's knees went weak. He leaned back, his face a mask of cold, corporate indifference. "Congratulations on the deal, Ms. Riley." And just like that, he turned. His security team moved with him, and the bubble popped. He was gone. He walked out of the Metropolitan Museum, a billionaire in a wine-soaked shirt, leaving a trail of purple footprints and the ghost of his old life behind. Jessica Riley was left standing alone in the Egyptian wing. She had done it. She had secured her $900 million deal. She was a legend. But she had lost her husband, she had lost her dignity, and she had lost everything else in a single public act of contempt. Be careful who you look down on. The person you think is a nobody might just be everybody. Thanks for watching, Inspiration Seeker.